Hello, everyone. Welcome to another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. I'm your lecturer, Lady TrenettWilson, and I wanted to talk to you today about how Black businesses thrive during the Gilded Age. Now, why is that important? Because today we see Black business owners facing a lot of obstacles to funding, to employees, to staffing, all kinds of stuff. And what just happened to the man who does tenderism? Where the man stole his well, allegedly, let me just say that, allegedly took his trademark for the tenderism word. So we need to know how to protect ourselves, and we need to be encouraged that people who came before us made a way when they were facing the hardest time in history. So welcome, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining. Don't forget, hit that like, share, and subscribe because it pushes it through the algorithm. And I can't thank you enough for always sticking with Royal Black and Elite. And the Gilded Age. So you know about the Gilded Age, and if you don't, because you haven't listened, this is the first time you've tuned in. That happened between the 1870s and about the 1900s. And this is a time when America was going through great industrialization and growth. And you didn't really see a lot of Black people. I mean, you might have heard of the Carnegies or the Rockefellers, but the Black people's experience at that time, unless you were looking for it, was often hidden in history. And so that's why I love this channel, because we bring out all of those people who were lost in history, who did some great Royal Black and Elite things. And these people really did. Now, during the 1870s, about the 1900s, that was right after slavery ended in the Civil War. So that's 1865 is when it ended. But there was a great migration, because even though slavery had ended, the collapse of Reconstruction, Jim Crow segregation, and exclusion from white owned businesses and banks made it very difficult for Black people to move around. So what they did is created a parallel economy. Now, when they created this parallel economy, they created what they call Black business districts all throughout the country. We often hear about the one, Black Wall Street, in Oklahoma, Tulsa, Oklahoma, Greenwood, but there were many all across the country. I left a link down below, and it's also on the end card for you, about Black business districts throughout the country, throughout history. If you've never heard of any, definitely click down below and continue to learn, because these Black business districts, they have their own grocery stores, law offices, medical clinics, hotels, and movie theaters. In fact, J.B. Stratford, he owned the Stratford Hotel, and it was one of the largest Black owned hotels in the United States at the time. And so you had similar districts like Durham Black, Wall Street, Sweet Auburn, and Jackson Ward. Definitely click down below. Have you ever heard of any of these places? Are you from any of these places? Please leave your comments. That lets me know you're having a good time learning about this information, and to striking a chord with you, because this is our history. And like I said, a lot of times we don't get to hear that these places existed. And yes, they did exist in all these different states. However, this notion that we were just, poor all over the country is not true. We even had banks and life insurance companies, like John Merrick's life insurance company. In 1898, he founded the North Carolina Mutual Life Insurance Company. Listen, y'all, it became the largest Black-owned business in America. Not just insurance business, but business, period, in America. It was a major employer of Black professionals, and it funded a lot of sources it was the funding source for a lot of places like schools, businesses, and homes. Now, I think you would be hard pressed to go to a Black business and get enough money to fund a $500,000, $1 million home for 30 years. But there are Black banks. You all click down below. Lady T has it. I have it down below about the Black banks that are in our country. And so there are other funding sources, but it didn't just start today. It started years ago. with these wonderful people. Just like Magdalena Walker, she founded the St. Luke Penny Savings Bank, and Alonzo Herndon, he built Atlanta Life Insurance Company, and that was in Sweet Auburn's economy. Are you in Atlanta? Have you heard of Sweet Auburn? So these people were great people, lost in our history oftentimes and not talked about enough in the business aspect. We had black owned media communications company like Robert S. Abbott. He founded the Chicago Defender. It was the largest black newspaper. It reached hundreds of thousands of readers. It promoted black business, and it was one of the single most catalysts for the great migration, where blacks were moving from the South to the North because the newspaper was telling them, hey, you all, there is a better way. I left also a link for the Green Book. We have such great content around this information, so definitely check that out. So hospitality, real estate, and professional services. That's really where we thrive. We owned a few restaurants as well. Now, why did these black businesses thrive? Because community loyalty. The people truly went to these places because they couldn't go anywhere else. Mutual aid, so they helped each other. A collective economy, which means we brought all the money from the black community and it stayed in the black community. What happened is when the government began to be our enemy and gave money to other people, and at that time, we're looking at illegal migration right now, but it's always been the case that when people came from other countries, the government financed their businesses, and they, in essence, became our competition. So, excellence under pressure, that was also something that we did. We were excellent in what we did. Now, what happened? These businesses did not fail overnight, and they were destroyed, a lot of them. Discrimination laws, federal protection, all kinds of things led to many of these businesses not succeeding over years and not being able to pass down from generation to generation. But when we look at today and how black businesses can thrive, I do believe we can look at the example: excellence, character, and truth. One thing they did not tolerate in these economies during this time period was corruption. And they talked to each other and they held each other accountable. Black people held black people accountable. We don't see that often. We just want to, a lot of time cape for one another. But if we want to build this, if we want to take this back, how they had it back then these are things that we have to deal with. They circulated the black dollar within the black community. They supported one another, and they were excellent. So this is how black businesses survive. I like to call it the Gilded Age black blueprint. And I think it's worth really doing some conversation and studying around it, because if we do not, we see people stealing from us. We see the government moving to close businesses, all kinds of things. What are we doing in our communities to make sure we're well positioned? So I want to thank you all for joining me for another great episode of Royal Black and Elite. As you know, my lectures are for educational and entertainment purposes only, and the Fair Act use is in effect. Now, y'all, don't forget, hit like, share, and subscribe. And I want to thank you for, just spending some of your day with me to learn a little bit more about our elite black history. Now, click down below and continue to learn. Thank you for joining me.